We are live. Live. I can confirm on Twitch.
Good. Hooray for everything. How's it going?
Oh man.
I mean, that's a lot. If you say, oh man, you can't just then leave me hanging. How is it
Yeah.
going?
Uh the weeds are winning. Uh the skunks have returned, but so far we haven't had any dogs skunked, but I was
Yeah.
on a telecon Friday and my desk is in the corner of my itty bitty tiny office upstairs and the monitors are catty corner, and when I'm on telecons I'll look at the monitor that allows me to also just look out the window. And I'm
Yeah.
talking, and halfway through a sentence, I realize the thing walking through my field of view is a skunk.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and whatever I was saying was gone. What came out of my mouth was that is a skunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the person I was talking to was like, "How do you bathe skunks?" And we had a discussion about this. And that night, I had a nightmare about my dogs getting into it with the skunks. And the very next day, I was out buying wading pools for my dogs so I can bathe them outside if I need to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's funny. Yeah. You're prepared. You're
yeah,
preparing for the inevitable
yeah,
in skunkening. And
yeah.
so you're like, make sure you have all the supplies on hand so that an ashamed dog can learn a valuable life lesson and hopefully you can all move on. So we're having wildlife in full effect. One is the deer breached my
Oh
defenses
no.
on Friday night,
Oh no.
got in and munched a bunch of my fruit trees. So always, they wait until you're just like
Yeah,
so satisfied with yourself that you've kept them out and they'll never make it in now, and you can just lower your defenses and not
never.
think about it anymore. And then boom, they get in, eat a bunch of trees. But the dummies didn't realize that I put all my least desired fruit trees on the outside ring of the garden, and so they went for those. Ate a bunch of pears, idiots. But they didn't eat my apricots and nectarines and cherry trees. So hopefully, the trees will bounce back. And now we've just if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
other thing is that we have just a ludicrous amount of just wildlife around our house at this point. So we've got four squirrels, and we've talked about this before. These little guys that just come in and they have zero fear about us. Like you're on a hike and one of these little squirrels will be sitting on a tree and just be yelling at you, right? Just barking at you, and they're like little. Their bodies are like this
They're
long. They're
chipmunk
so
size.
tiny and they're just adorable. And so you're sitting here and they're just running around, chasing each other, wrestling, running up on the couch, running over you while you're sitting on the couch. They just bust right over you and just keep going. And so the problem is they're getting quite curious. They come into the house and like we'll
Oh
we'll go
no.
over and like sniff because we have to leave everything gets so hot in here, so we have to
Yeah.
leave all our doors open. So squirrels will come in, they'll root around on the in the cabinet where we keep bird seed and poop on everything, and so we have to chase them out of the house, and they don't want to be chased, right?
No, no, they
You're
do
like get
not.
out of here, squirrel, and just looks up at you like you know. So, so now we have a battery powered leaf blower, and so we will sort of blow squirrels out of the house if we have to.
I adore that. We have a problem with birds getting into our house.
Yeah, we do too.
And so we finally broke down and we found a solution that seems to work for the dogs and for bird prevention. We
Yeah,
have these screen, it's essentially a curtain, and we ran magnetic tape along the bottom of the door frame and put magnets along the bottom of the screen, and it's just the same stuff you get to prevent birds from eating your blackberries. So it's super cheap. You can get a
yeah,
gazillion yards of it,
yeah.
and the dogs are like, I don't care about these magnets. Phew,
Right.
they're out,
Yeah,
they're in, no big deal.
yeah.
Birds are like, I do not know what this is. I am not
Right.
going to try this. And
Yeah, yeah. We do something kind of similar, which is that we have to put we have to put that cloth, that
yeah,
really
yeah.
light sort of diaphanous cloth
Hmm.
on the outside of the windows, so this mosquito netting
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
and then we have magnets that attach it so that the stuff just sits there, and it's there as a the birds have suddenly they can see it now, and so before they were just whacking into our windows and killing themselves, and so now we've got these screens on the outside,
Yeah.
and so the birds will come and you'll see one sort of come at our window and then stop and then go a different direction, or they'll just womp against the window against the screen,
And
and
it's not
it's
as
it's
dangerous.
it's got about 6 inches of give, so
Yeah.
it's like they hit a trampoline and then they bust off, and so we haven't killed any birds now on our house for better part of a year.
That's
The
amazing.
downside is that you can't see, you lose a little bit of your vision
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this stuff is a screen, right? And then but the problem is they'll come inside and then they'll go try to escape and they'll whack into the window from the inside, and now we
Yeah.
don't so far nobody has died coming in because they don't build up enough speed while they're
Right.
inside of the house and they're trying to get out. But I think we're going to have to put screen on the inside of the windows and the
Oh
outside of the
man.
windows during the heavy bird season. And then we just remove all these screens at the end of the season, and we're good. But it's the same thing, magnets,
Yeah,
screen,
yeah.
safe. Um,
The most
and
ridiculous bird issue I ever had is we have I it was a gift from my dissertation advisor, and it is probably the best random gift I've ever gotten. I've gotten really like amazing thoughtful gifts, but this one was truly random. It is an ant head. It is a chunk of wood carved into an ant face, and it has this really cool crown of burly wood, and I found a Christmas tree decoration that's a fake nest with 2 fake birds
yeah,
in it, and I put it on top of the ant head on the wall of the kitchen,
yeah,
and I couldn't figure out where a bird that I was chasing down went. Like, I chased it down the stairs, turned the corner, no more bird,
yeah.
and it had gone in the nest with the 2 fake birds.
It's awesome. All right, I guess we should do our
We
job.
probably should. We probably should.
Okay.
All right. I am clicking. No, Audition has detected a problem with the current audio hardware settings. Okay, let me figure out what
Uh-oh.
Audition is sad about. Ah, settings, audio hardware. Uh, I got a new microphone that is the same species as the old microphone, so I can
Mhm.
have matching microphones on my 2 computers. And Audition was like, "What is this?"
Yeah. See, that's the way. Like,
Yeah.
in my old age, I am just going for the simple thing that works, and then I just get however many of them that I need,
Mhm.
right? And
Yes.
so, for example, I've got a one adapter for my MacBook,
Yeah.
and I am constantly unplugging that adapter and
Yeah.
moving it around the
Fine.
house to a new location, plugging it back in, unplugging it. And I was just like, okay, let me just get a 100-watt adapter for cheap. They're like $30, and then
Yeah.
let me get a nice long cable that's like
Yeah.
really good quality for $10.
Uh-huh.
And then let me plug them in all the places that I'm
Uh-huh.
going to go. And
Uh-huh.
now I have, right? And
Yeah,
like this
that's
kind
my
of thing.
life.
Yeah, exactly. And so you sort of move to this place where you're just like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Why am I dragging this stuff around when I could sort of make it a lot more simple? Yeah. And like, workout gear, I've just got like indoor shoes and outdoor shoes.
Yeah.
I put on the indoor shoes when I work out inside. I put on my outdoor shoes when I work out outside. So anyway, yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
Anchor has like I love their little tiny USB-C, USB-A. Those are the
Yeah.
ones I've littered around my house and in my
Yes.
pocketbook.
Yeah, exactly. Always have them available, because it's just like the amount of time you spend
Yeah.
searching around for all these little things.
I
All right.
love it. All
Tell me when
right.
you're ready.
Okay. I am pressing record again. This time it is actually recording.
I am.
We're good to go.
Okay, here we go. Astronomy Cast, episode 762, NASA's new budget. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I am doing well. This is our last episode before summer
Hmm.
hiatus. I am planning this summer to upgrade our website to Divi 5. So if any of you out there want anything specific added to our website, drop us a message. I have
Right on.
swapped over our Patreon so that I no longer do public messages. I do free and paid subscriber messages. So go
Mm,
join our Patreon to get
yeah.
regular updates, even if you join for free.
Yes.
Um,
This is really important. Like
yeah,
while you're listening to this, that Patreon allows you to just follow a creator for
mhm,
free. And like, for example, on Astronomy Cast, Pamela sends out tons of
yeah,
information, and most of it is just freely available. A lot of the stuff that we do is just free, and you don't have to subscribe. And it's the same thing over on my Patreon for Universe Today. Almost all of the content that we release is released for free and public, and it has longer versions of our news stories, longer versions of our Q&As, longer versions of the interviews, and it's all just free. And why do we do this? We do this because if you're using social media, or if you're using YouTube or all these kinds of things, these are walled gardens
yeah,
that are trying to keep you in, and they can change their algorithm and cause us no end of grief at a moment's notice. But if you use Patreon, then we have a direct relationship. When we provide new information or create a new version of the show or want to give you some other cool content, we can connect directly and send it to you. So again, there's no commitment. You just go to patreon.com/astronomycast and then just follow us for free. And they're even like, I don't know if we're doing this with Astronomy Cast, but on the Universe Today one, we've got a custom podcast feed that has additional content in it, and it's also free,
yeah,
and yet is way better. And you just have to follow that, and now you're getting this additional content. And like, obviously, we'd love it if you became a patron, but even so, the thing that's most important to us is that we have a direct connection to you, and it's not intermediated by YouTube or Twitter or anything. That we put out a message and you receive the message because you've chosen to listen to us. So that's why we've got that, and please go there and do it.
yeah. So this summer we aren't going to be producing new episodes, but website is getting a major refresh. Uh, I'm going to go through and enhance a lot of our audio because there are tools that exist today that
Yes.
did not exist when we started doing the show, where I can just run it through a machine learning algorithm, not generative AI, machine learning. They are not the same.
Yeah.
And it will find the noise and make it dead without removing the parts of my voice and Fraser's voice that we want
Yeah.
to keep. Um, and
This is great.
yeah, and I'm also going to be planning for a giant fundraiser that we're tentatively scheduling for the weekend of October 11th, because we have recognized with Cosmic Quest and everything else we do, there is no longer going to be any federal funding for
Mm.
this kind of stuff. It's gone. It's dead. That is the
Yeah. Well,
topic of
this will
this
be part of the
episode.
conversation. So like, hang tough. We're gonna bring this
Yeah.
up as part of the
So
conversation.
October
Yeah.
11th, save the date.
Okay. All right. Now, before we get into this episode, I need to issue about 1,000 caveats
Yes.
because it is going to be a very controversial episode.
Yes.
And I know we're going to get emails from people who are saying that this is overly politicized. But the reality is that this is news. This is financial information. This is the new budget for NASA, and this is going to have implications for science. And I think some people are going to say we're going to be fear mongering. I am going to do my absolute best to rein in the emotions of this episode so that we focus on the facts. And I think that, our audience, there are sort of two political factions here. There is a one faction that is for the current administration, and there's another faction that is against the current administration. That's fine, right? Like, feel free to disagree. But I think everyone who is listening to this is pro space exploration and pro science. And that is our agenda, right? That is our bias. That's where we're going to put our thumbs on this, is that we are pro space exploration and pro science. We are not against these things. We are pro the scientific method. So that's the first thing, is that this conversation is going to be held as much as possible in that vein, which is that we're going to try and just convey the information. We're going to try to minimize the emotion, even though we are definitely feeling emotion. And we're going to try to give you something that you can understand what's going to happen coming forward. The other thing that I think we really need to do is sort of explain, provider disclosures. The first thing is, like, I'm Canadian. I'm not American. And while Canada is entrenched in a lot of negotiations with the United States, we have an astronaut, part of Artemis 2. We build arms and put them on everything, that we have all kinds of existing obligations. One of the instruments on board James Webb. There's also sort of, a renaissance in hiring scientists happening in Canada right now, an increase in our budgets for space exploration that is coming as a direct result of this, I hate to use the word opportunity for Canadian research firms. So keep that in mind that, when I say things, it might be that I am unintentionally being Canadian when I sort of consider the perspective of this. Pamela, you have your own caveats that I think we should really definitely get through
Yes.
here, which is that, you are funded in part by government programs that
Yes.
are going to go away.
Yeah. So my funding has always been a wild mix of different sources. Right now, my federal grant funding is about the lowest it's been other than during the pandemic. And so I'm not going to be as hard hit as many of my colleagues. So I'm dealing with survivor guilt more than I'm dealing with
Mm.
terror and fear. But I am watching the people I have collaborated with for 20 years leaving NASA, leaving academia, redefining who they are. So for me, I'm going to figure out how to be okay. That is what I do.
Mhm.
But
Right.
I'm watching the people around me suffer, and I'm watching the institute
Right.
that I work for really, really suffer.
Right.
So,
So
yeah.
Right. So, like, your caveat here is that, the agency that you work for, the Planetary Science Institute,
Yep.
is going to lose a ton of funding,
Yes.
and you have tons of colleagues and friends who are going to either be laid off, fired, or are taking an early retirement.
Yeah.
The forms of funding that you have been able to access in the past to do the kinds of education and outreach are pretty much going away.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we have support through our patrons. We have support with various fundraising and the other projects and funding sources that's going to make sure the Cosmic Quest exists in some form moving into the forward. But it's hard not to see all this stuff and not feel like they're gut punches. So we are collectively feeling gut punched. And so there, I think that's all the caveats out of the way. Let's proceed. Here's my introduction. Normally, we try to end the season on a high note, but there is unfolding news that we just have to cover before we leave you for the summer. NASA's new budget is here, and it's 25% smaller. We'll cover what the changes are and try to understand the implications. And we will talk about it in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. All right. Well, let's get into this. So let's go back in time and sort of get a sense of what is NASA's historical budget levels for the last couple of years. What is normal for NASA?
Well, NASA's been struggling more often than not. Its highest budget in history was just over 25 billion. Um, it's unclear when we're going to get back there. That was the 2023 budget. Um,
Right. So that's like historically, it's about
yeah,
20, what'd you say, 23,
it's been in the
24?
20s for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And so it had been sort of 20, 24 billion, 23 billion. And in fact, back during the last Trump administration, there was mild increases
Yeah.
to the NASA budget. There was a lot of really interesting planetary science. There was the recommitment to send the human astronauts to the moon. So, and that's where it's been. It's been a sort of like a slight increase over time. And there's been a few projects have been canceled and so on. So, all right. So that's where we've been. Then about 2 months ago, we got an announcement from the White House that they had released their skinny budget. And this was going to be a sort of shortened version, high level view of what they were going to be resetting the budget at. And then about 3 weeks ago from when we're recording this, we got the full budget.
Yeah.
And so now we see in detail what is the amount that the White House administration is hoping that will actually be passed through Congress and the Senate. So what is that sort of baseline? What is the budget that they're looking for?
18.8 billion with significantly more cuts to science and learning opportunities, so things like internships, than cuts to space exploration.
All right, so
So,
let's talk about the things that are, yeah, let's talk about the things that are getting cut.
um, 19 different space missions that are currently active.
Okay, so let's list a few so people know some of them.
So the one that I think is hardest on my heart is the OSIRIS-REx extended mission to the asteroid Apophis.
Right.
In a couple of years, that mission was actually supposed to be flying along with an asteroid that's going to be potentially daytime visible here on the planet Earth.
Right. So this is an existing mission. This is the OSIRIS-REx mission. This brought back a sample of asteroid Bennu to Earth. Now the plan was to retask this spacecraft that is already in space,
Yeah.
that already has propellant, to chase down asteroid Apophis, go into orbit, and be there when it does a flyby of Earth,
And
giving us a really good understanding of what happens to a near-Earth asteroid when it makes a flyby of Earth, and make observations directly there. So they're just, and so like I just want to understand this. They're just canceling it.
yes.
Like they're just not like no, like are they going to just shut down
Yes.
OSIRIS-REx?
And
Okay.
it's like I said, 19 active missions. It's 41 planned missions altogether are getting shut down. And this means that the greatest opportunity to get cheap and easy data of an asteroid is one that NASA is going to be ignoring. There was discussion for about 3 seconds where NASA posted to their website a call for proposals to use the in storage, completely built Janus missions that had to stay grounded due to changes in the Psyche mission profile. There were thoughts of how can we use Janus? How can we take advantage of other existing hardware to go take advantage of this amazing opportunity? And when news fully hit that not only are we not launching anything new, but OSIRIS-REx is going to get pulled, I got a notice I never thought I'd get. My planetarium software on my phone sent me a notice to call NASA and complain about this. Not NASA,
Right.
call the
Yeah.
Senate and complain about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Right. So, some other big ones that I think we should be aware of, the Mars sample return mission is essentially canceled. And,
Juno,
that's not a big
Gowen.
surprise because that was sort of starting to get over budget, and we were starting to see people were having a hard time making that fit within any budget, even within the existing budget. But there's a lot of other stuff that I think people are quite fond of. New Horizons, which is
Yeah.
currently sort of in interstellar space, trying to potentially find its next target. Uh, Juno, which is exploring Jupiter.
Yeah.
Then there's upcoming missions, Da Vinci, Veritas, which are going to be going to Venus. There's a lot of planetary science missions. But do we know for sure? Because the other ones like St. Nancy Grace Roman looks like that's still go.
So, what we're dealing with is a confusing situation because NASA is an executive branch agency, and civil servants legally in this country are not allowed to do anything that could be construed as lobbying, which means they're not allowed to make a case to keep things funded to Congress or representatives. And so the way it normally works is the president puts forward the name of a administrator. Congress confirms the administrator, usually in the first couple of months, if not sooner, of a presidency. And then that person, Bridenstine was an amazing example of this, would go to Congress and say, we need to do these changes. We have to do this. And that
Mhm.
person behind the scenes, in some of the best cases, would also go to bat fighting the president to keep things funded.
Right.
Right now, we don't have that political appointee, that person who is legally allowed to lobby. Well, it's not technically lobbying, isn't technically allowed to advocate. We don't have that allowed to advocate person.
Right.
Janet Petra, who's the acting administrator, is a civil service servant. She is required by law to do what the president says. And this means that right now we are in a situation where it appears that NASA is obeying in advance, where Congress hasn't passed a budget.
Right.
Congress determines the budget, determines what is funded. A mission isn't canceled until its budget line is canceled by Congress. This is why Viper is canceled, but not canceled.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's really important to be clear that there is, everything we're talking about here is the budget that the White House has been requested.
Yeah.
The possibility is that Congress and the Senate will refuse we'll vote a different budget in that will stand, and then it'll be business as usual for NASA, and these missions won't get cut. But I think it's been pretty safe to say so far we've seen that Congress and the Senate, because they're in the same political group as the president, have sort of fallen in line. And so this, although there could be something different that happens, I'm not sure where I would place my odds right now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it is a difficult thing to understand on many different levels. Currently, as we record this on June 30th at 1:30 in the afternoon Central Time, they are doing various votes on the Senate floor over amendments and riders to the overarching budget bill that the president is pushing for. A few Republicans have said no to the bill.
Hmm.
One of them, Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, changed her mind after she got special dispensation that cuts that other states will face won't affect Alaska. We have seen uh, a few people stand out, like Josh Hawley in Missouri, because they are in rural states. It turns out rural states are going to be particularly hard hit, and they're concerned that their state budgets won't be able to keep things maintained. So at this point, we have Schrodinger's budget bill.
Right. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't
So
know
this
what's
could,
going to happen.
and when we come out sort of the other side of summer, we might go, you know what? False alarm,
Yeah.
everything's fine. The new budget begins in October. And so this all has to be sort of settled before then.
Right.
But already, I mean, you're seeing, for example, the NASA has put a early retirement option in the hands of
Yeah.
people. I think 8% of NASA's workforce has already taken this retirement option. And, a lot of times these are very senior people who've been working in the agency for a long time. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge that even if this doesn't happen in the same way, you're going to have a hard time just rebuilding that. Okay, we're going to continue on with things that are getting cut, but it's time for another break. And we're back. All right, so before the break, we were talking about sort of planetary science. And I think, right now we don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. Someone is going to have to do the unfortunate job of saying, well, I've got a fraction of my original budget, so now I'm going to cancel out all of these missions. What other things are going to be had their budgets curtailed?
So we see, like I said, 41 canceled missions, 19 of which are active. We are also seeing upwards of 6,000 civil servant jobs being canceled.
Right.
These are people who are career bureaucrats working to advance NASA's mission programs, engineers, grant managers, every different layer of the institute.
Right. And,
Um,
I mentioned, 8% have already taken a buyout.
yeah.
So, layoffs. And so I think a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going to take this more orderly exit before I have to take the disorderly exit. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Um, so the issue is that, I think a lot of people are looking at, we know that there's going to be, as you say, hundreds of people, thousands of people cut from the workforce at NASA. So that's why you're seeing a lot of people taking this early retirement, because, it's better to take an orderly exit on your own terms as opposed to a disorderly exit on someone else's terms later on. But, whoever is left, people are going to be laid off in the thousands. Okay. Oh, people are saying that you're muted, so it sounds like the whole sound system went under. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hmm.
Okay. It
Can the audio hear us? Can the
testing.
audience hear us?
Yes. Yes, they can.
Okay. All right.
Hold
So
on.
do I need
Starting
to
a new.
restate that, or do you want to just
No,
pick up from what I said?
you were fine. I just need to start a new recording. I'm
Okay.
so sorry, Rich. Man. Um, okay, I'm glad I caught it. All right, this is part 2. Sorry, Rich. Um, yeah, so
Okay. Yeah.
so in the best of possible worlds, we are going to come back in September. The Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate will have figured out something that isn't it's literally called the Big Beautiful Bill. It's a
Hmm.
ridiculous name. They will have figured out something else, and science as it stands will be maintained.
Right.
No one really thinks it's going to be that simple. We think that there could be particular things that survive. Um, but and this is a timeless statement I'm about to make. If you are in the United States or you are a US citizen abroad, call your elected officials for your region and tell them you want to see the United States fund science.
Hmm.
Historically, the Republicans have done a great job with this. Um, there's no reason, however, not to ask for more money for science because we are 0.3%, 0.3%
Yeah.
of the federal budget, NASA is. And when you reduce down to how much science is funded and recognize NSF is much smaller,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. We haven't talked about NSF. We'll
yeah,
get back to that in a second. All right. So I guess we were talking about the cut of the workforce. We've talked
yeah.
about planetary science. Let's talk about Earth science.
Uh,
This is where some of the deepest cuts have happened.
yeah, so Earth science is basically going away. I
Mhm.
don't know how else to frame it. So on the list of missions going away, we have Terra, we have Aqua, we have Aura. Uh, I'm scanning through trying. We have Discover, which is my favorite Earth
Yeah, I love
science
Discover. Yeah.
mission.
And then
Um,
there's like obviously there's missions in the works that are going to get, there's the new Landsat
yeah,
mission that's coming up. So there's a bunch of this stuff. Effectively there's going to be very little Earth science being contributed by NASA.
yeah,
And you can imagine, if Noah took over that role, whatever, but Noah's getting its cuts as well. So,
yeah.
you know, just in general, this NASA's role in helping us understand planet Earth is being severely curtailed. Um,
Earth
Education and
science is getting cut, just to add numbers to that, from a FY24 2.1 to FY26, they are looking at 1.0.
right.
Yeah.
So, and again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen,
Yeah.
but all of those missions, like you have to take budget away from the people who are maintaining the existing spacecraft, or take budget away from the people who are building the new spacecraft, new missions, Earth monitoring, airplanes that fly
Yeah.
into hurricanes, all of that kind of stuff is going to be curtailed to some degree.
And
That we're going to find out the
hurricanes.
details.
I want to hit
Yeah.
on hurricanes real fast in particular. USAID had been funding NASA observations of the Earth over areas where the USAID was working. And when their budget got cut, all of that Earth science got cut.
Hmm.
Um, the Department of Defense had been working in concert with NOAA to do microwave observations of the planet Earth that were used for weather monitoring. We also had all of these Earth observing missions that were looking at space weather, trying to protect our spacecraft in orbit around the planet, and then looking at our atmosphere as well. What we are going to see is a continued marked decrease in quality of storm predictions at the same time that storms are getting more
Mhm.
severe. And the loss of the microwave data in particular means that at night, when we often see hurricanes massively increasing in power, we're not going to have the ability to observe them.
Mhm.
And so it is going to be entirely possible that people go to bed with a Category 2 hurricane 6 hours out and wake up to Category 5.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I mean, these are like, we don't know specifically which missions are going to get canceled. We
Right.
don't know which missions are going to get shut down. We don't know. But I mean, if I told you that you now have 1/3 of your house finances, you
Yeah.
know, then you would have to make cuts in your house.
And they're making those cuts right now. So for instance, that microwave data is no longer getting sent out. I believe it's either effective today or effective next
Okay.
Monday.
Yeah.
So
So that's a
that's an
good example of
immediate
something.
change
Right.
that's
Okay.
going
Yeah.
into effect.
Okay. And then I think a thing that's quite sort of for both of us is all the education outreach, and that's just
Yeah.
zeroed.
Yeah, it's zeroed, and one of the more fascinating places that this is getting reflected is in how they're changing communications. One of the things that research into Twitter has found is if any one Twitter account posts too much like a crazy person with post, 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 people will unfollow it. And so agencies like NASA have taken advantage of this understanding to say, okay, we're going to have a general account that only posts the most important things. And then we're going to have all of these sub accounts that allow different missions to get their message across
Mhm.
in really interesting ways. Many of us remember fondly the NASA Phoenix mission that basically um, live tweeted its own death of cold on the surface of Mars. And
Right.
these kinds of opportunities to give missions personality and style are only
Yeah.
possible when you have mission by mission social media profiles.
Yeah, it makes that part makes me really sad
Yeah.
because essentially before you had just the freedom of one small group to just run their own Twitter feed and just use it however they wanted to communicate their stuff.
Yeah.
And so now those are all being shut down and everything is being centralized and reviewed in a central authority
Yeah.
that is then going to, allow stuff to come out of the main NASA feed and a few smaller feeds. But you're going from what was dozens, if not hundreds, of separate Twitter feeds into something. And I think, like, absolutely, if you put me in charge of managing NASA's Twitter feeds, I would go through and go, there's a lot of dead feeds here. People aren't updating them. Let's have a policy for this. But I think if you have a small group that's working on a mission and they want to talk to the public, they should just be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because outreach and so on. So anyway, we're seeing that, but also just there's just a lot of funds that NASA spends in making educational material available,
Yeah.
interacting with universities, doing a lot of outreach about the work that they're doing. And I think that brand that we experience of NASA with really cool websites and really amazing real-time data that you can go and access and you can sort of feel like you're a part of the mission. A lot of that stuff will, there are people at NASA whose only job it is to make that stuff all go and work and make people feel enthusiastic. And that is all getting, the budget is being turned to zero.
And it's more than just the budget issue. So one of the things NASA and the National Science Foundation have been very good at is recognizing that increased science education is good for the entire world. The more people we have engaged in learning and doing science, the more we can advance civilization. And there are a lot of places in the United States, because education funds are tied to property taxes, where the schools just don't have equal opportunity. And NASA and the National Science Foundation prioritized going into these disadvantaged communities and doing educational experiences. And that is now considered DEI, and
Mm,
it is strictly
right.
forbidden. So you have not only massive budget cuts taking place, but you also have this situation where if the school you are serving is minority majority school, so mostly not white people. If you have a school system that is majority English as a second language, if you have a school system that is majority free school lunches, you're not allowed to specifically fund them.
Mm,
Um,
right.
and so I got an email from USRA which is one of the major granting bodies for massive NASA National Science Foundation projects. And it was letting us all know that REACH, which was a teacher training program, an educational materials development program, was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And like there's a lot of material that's done for teachers. So
Yeah.
that when a teacher is going to be teaching about science, space exploration, astronomy in their classroom, there are all of these resources that they can rely on from NASA to be able to do that part. And the hope is that you're going to be able to reach young people and in the schools and get them inspired and excited about and understand the kinds of options, the career options that are there for them. And so all of these resources are just going away. Not to mention a lot, again, we don't really know that we don't really know what the implications are going to be for our job as communicators of this stuff. I've felt a sort of a silence in the feeds. So, every day I go through all of the RSS feeds from all the different agencies.
Yeah.
NASA wasn't at the American Astronomical Society meeting this year, a month ago. And so there was a fraction of the news that was coming out of the AAS. I'm not seeing a lot of press releases coming out of NASA anymore. So I'm having to go back to first principles. I'm going to, archive and journals and things like that and finding this research. But you can feel that this communication of interesting information has just this tap has turned down to a fraction of what it was. All right, we're gonna talk about some other missions and programs, things that are changing, and things are gonna get increased. But it's time for another break. And we're back. All right, we are way over time budget on this one, but who cares? Like we're just going to roll until this one ends.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about Artemis because this one is not surprising to me.
Yeah.
And yet, still kind of feels a little weird and sad.
So I'm going to open this up a little bit broader. Last week for Escape Velocity Space News, I did a deep dive into Starship after realizing Starship and Rubin Observatory have both been in the works for the same amount of time. Both of them were supposed to launch in 2019, and it was just an interesting side by side. And one
Right.
of the things I realized was Starship has already spent half as much money on its development as SLS.
Mm.
And so while the future projected per mission costs will be significantly less, the development costs aren't proving to be what was anticipated. And comparing it instead to New Glenn, we have New Glenn is estimated to be about 68 million per launch currently, and Starship is at 100 million per launch currently. And Starship has been blown up 10 times on 9 launch attempts. And when the number of blown up vehicles exceeds the number of launch attempts, I have concerns.
Right.
So Artemis is trying to move forward where it has made these contractual agreements that are fixed fee. So the companies trying to fulfill these budgets are not getting all the money they need to do their innovation. Where Starship it was supposed to have orbital in 2019. We still haven't hit orbital. It was supposed to have already landed crew in 2024. It's now estimated that instead of the between 4 and 6 refueling missions that were originally planned, it's instead going to take greater than 20. And I need to give a shout out to Dustin over at Smarter Every Day because he was the first person I found to point this out, and it has now been confirmed with NASA numbers.
Yeah, Destin Sandler did a great job of that.
Amazing
All right, but
video.
let's talk about like specifically like with Artemis.
Yeah.
So a couple of things are going to happen. First, the Lunar Gateway is going to be canceled, even though a lot of the modules are already complete.
Yeah.
We've got Artemis 2, which is due for launch very soon now, and then we're going to have Artemis 3, which is going to bring the people back to the surface of the moon, and then the Artemis mission is essentially going to be canceled.
Yeah.
Or at least the SLS and the Orion capsule are going to be canceled.
Yes.
And then whatever the future holds will depend on what's possible with the current space fleet. And, you're looking at potentially Starship, if it functions, or some combination of Falcon Heavy or New Glenn, or, and then current landers, obviously Starship can be a lander. Blue Origin has their lander.
Mark II. Yeah.
Yeah, plus there are the various smaller landers and various science platforms, Firefly, Intuitive Machines, so on. So I
Yeah.
think that the SLS is done, and we in theory, Artemis 3 will be an SLS launches with an Orion on top. It's going to dock with a Starship that's already proven that it can land safely on the surface of the moon. But even that, I mean, we're seeing the launch delays happening with Starship with the various tests.
Yeah.
So, I think that right now is all up in the air. We don't know how that's going to play out, but we do know that the SLS is over and that Lunar Gateway is a goner.
I
Um,
I am honestly not as 100% on SLS being gone for the very simple reason that Alabama can really lobby well. And
right.
between Alabama, Texas, and Florida really
Yeah.
wanting to keep it alive, Texas is trying to steal the space shuttle from the Smithsonian.
Right. So,
Yeah, there's weird
if
stuff going down.
right, if there is going to be a battle for the budget, it could very well end up being, starting or
Yeah.
continuing with the SLS, since we might see the SLS and the Orion continue on, especially if Starship continues to have challenges in getting into orbit and demonstrating orbital refueling and getting to the moon and demonstrating a landing on the moon. Like if that pushes out, then people are going to go like, what about the moon? And so who knows? I think you're exactly right that I think what the budget is called for and what will actually happen is one of the places where we could see a lot of action. Now let's talk about a couple of things that are increasing, because there has been an interest in increasing NASA's exploration of Mars with people.
Yes. So currently, and I actually was talking with the program advisor 3 weeks ago. One of my program officers, not advisor, program officers at NASA, about things that are still getting funded and science that supports human exploration and rovers, landing systems on Moon, Mars, as well as being optimized for machine learning and AI solutions, are things that they are interested in funding. The current thinking is twofold. On one side, we have people arguing you need to go to the moon before you go to Mars. On the other side, you have people arguing let's just go straight to Mars.
Yep.
Um, that's an argument for the ages that ranks right up there with Linux
Yeah.
versus Windows versus Mac. It's a
Yeah.
religious debate at this point. We are
Yeah.
not getting into that.
We settled it here on this channel already. So I feel, that's already been decided. Everyone is just going to have to decide if they're going to be able to get up to speed with how we feel about this. Yeah. So I think there was an increasing development in spacesuits that could go to Mars, some interest in some other platforms, technology. But at the same time, we're seeing cancellation of advanced propulsion techniques like nuclear
Nuclear
fission.
propulsion is
Yeah.
going away. That
Nuclear
is no
propulsion
longer an
rockets.
idea.
Yeah, that's getting canceled. So a lot of the interesting propulsion ideas that might take you to Mars are all getting canceled. So I I want to sort of stop this part of the
Yeah.
conversation. And you did a little bit more research just to talk about how the world's space agencies are sort of compared to NASA and what we might see as they respond. So can you give us a sense of just like what other people are, how
Yeah.
does the rest of the, because I think, a lot of people feel like, why is this NASA's job to do all this?
Right.
The United States is just one country. What's Canada doing about this? What's China doing about this? What's Europe doing about this? So what are the other nations doing?
So I love Canada. I've worked with you for longer than I've known my husband, and my husband is also Canadian, and somehow you both went to university
Yeah,
together.
we
We
went to
did not
university
plan that.
together. Yeah, and didn't know each other.
Yeah.
We were in the same engineering, like literally the same engineering program at UBC,
The
and didn't know each
morning they
other.
discovered this was absolutely
Yeah,
hilarious. One
yeah,
of my favorite breakfast
yeah.
conversations.
Like, oh yeah, like where'd you go to school? I went to UBC. Oh, I went to UBC too. Yeah. What year? 1980. 1989. Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
What program? Engineering. Wait a minute.
It was
Yeah.
it was a wonderful morning. I am entirely a fan of Canada. Um, but one of the things Canada doesn't have is a giant budget. Your gross domestic product there, your GDP in 2025 was 2.23 trillion compared to America's 30.51 trillion.
Yeah.
So a very solid coming in, still in the top 10, and Canada's space agency, CSA, has a budget of 0.612 billion, 612 million.
Call that 600, yeah, 12 million. That sounds better
It
than
does,
0.6
but
billion.
everyone
Yeah.
else has numbers in billions, so I turned you
Okay.
into a decimal billion. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that we've been hearing is Canada is recruiting American scientists. True statement.
And
Japan is
how?
recruiting American scientists and students of the world. True fact. France is going overboard attracting American scientists. But they're looking to collect our best and brightest in the few to few tens of people. And the problem is the United States has the largest GDP in the world. We're at 30.51 trillion. The next closest nation is China at 19.23. Impressive, can actually compete. The next closest is Germany with 4.74 trillion. And so when you start looking at this level of difference in gross domestic product, the next set of numbers I'm going to give you totally make sense. So the European Space Agency had a total budget converted from euros to US dollars today of 9.03 billion. So their total budget and NASA's budget cuts are the same order of magnitude. So the European Space Agency would have to double their budget, more than double their budget, to compensate for what we're cutting here in the United States. JAXA is at 1 billion,
Hmm.
ISRO is at 1.5 billion. The budget for all these partners, JAXA, ESA, ISRO, and CSA, the total budget for all those partners is 12.2 billion.
Right.
So they'd have to increase their combined budget by 50%, increase it, so it would need to be 150% of what it currently is to compensate for cuts, and that's just not something that can happen. The one place where we can see things compensate is in China, where their civilian budget in 24, which was the most recent I could find, the civilian budget for space was 14.15 billion,
Right.
and they have a significantly larger amount in defense. And so we're actually in this situation where when we were starting in this field, we were seeing Chinese scientists coming to America. I went to university with a bunch of Chinese scientists. And now we're seeing American scientists, born and raised, getting recruited to go to Peking University and other institutes to do science there.
Mm.
And I had someone ask me yesterday if we're going to see American scientists, rocket scientists in particular, get recruited by Germany in a reciprocation of what happened post World War II. And that's entirely possible. ESA
Yeah, of
has
course.
major facilities in Garching, Germany, and currently has 300 job openings. Look at their
Yep.
website, apply.
Yep. All right. I think we need to wrap this up. I think
Yeah.
it'll be interesting, probably when we come out the other side of summer, 2 months from now,
Yeah.
a lot of these unknowns will have been solved. And what I would like to do, hopefully, is that we can give a less vibes based episode and a more now just in retrospect what happened, right? At that point, the bill should be the big beautiful bill should be passed. And then NASA and the various agencies across the US will have figured out which things are getting cut, and we will be able to sort of follow on. But I think, and this is back to what the intro that I gave at the beginning, which is that, we're not, we try to maintain, a neutral stance here.
Yeah.
But the thing that we all agree on is space and science are important, that education is important, that these are the kinds of things. So if you're an American and these changes are concerning to you,
Yeah.
then our recommendation is to have a chat with all of your local representatives at every level and and hash it out with them.
Yes.
And that if you have better recommendations, if you want things to go in a different direction, it's up to you to have these conversations. And now is the chance to do it before this is all locked in and it's just the way as it always was and everything just moves on. So this is your chance to take action for the kind of world, the kind of universe that you want to live in. Pamela, thank you.
Thank you,
Have a, do
Fraser.
you have some patrons?
I do. So this week I would like to thank Alan Gross, Andrew Allen, Antisaur, Astrosets, Bebop Apocalypse, Bob Zatsky, Brett Mormon, Bruce Amazine, Smansky, Cooper, David Rossetter, Dr. Woe, Ed, Fairchild, just as it sounds, Frederick Salvo, Galactic President, Scooperstar McScoopsalot, Glenn McDavid, Greg Vild, J. Alex Anderson, Jarvis Earl, Jeff Hoinmortar, Jim Schooler, Joanne Mulvey, John Fays, J.P. Sullivan, Katie Byrne, Kim Barron, Kinsaya Penflanco, Les Howard, Mark Phillips, Matt Rucker, MHW 1961 Supersymmetrical, Michael Witchman, Mike Heisey, Noah Albertson, Paul D. Disney, Peter, Rajev Akari, Robbie the Dog with a Dot, Ron Thorson, Sachi Takaba, Scott Bieber, Sergey Manouilov, Stephen Veit, Taz Talley, The Brain, Tiffany Rogers, Tricor, and Will Field. Thank you all so much, and we will see you on Patreon all summer long.
Thanks, everybody, for another wonderful season. Now, as I mentioned, we're doing a lot of work. In fact, we probably get our best work done during the summer hiatus because we have time to think.
Yeah.
And so, we're both going to be producing a lot of content over the summer, as well as, new stuff coming from all of our various small projects and so on. So stay tuned for all of that. But thank you, everybody, for your ongoing support. Thanks for everyone who works on this show, all of the editors, both video and audio and production that helps make this happen. We couldn't do this without you. Thanks to the moderators who show up in the channel every week and help wrangle and keep things under control. Thanks to everybody who watches us live and everybody who listens to this podcast on a weekly basis and has done so for, the
18 years.
18 years, the age of a child who could now drink alcohol in Quebec, in Canada. So thank you, everyone. And we will be back in 2 months for season 19.
Bye-bye,
See you then.
everyone. And then they saved. So Ironheart 50, I believe it was Ironheart 50, asked if money was getting redirected to go to the military. It's actually getting redirected to go to ICE.
Right.
If you look at the money that's getting cut and the money that's getting added, the largest amount of growth is to build concentration camps to put
and tax cuts
to billionaires. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you are I believe the current euphemism is a high-income individual whose taxes are going down, I would encourage you to find some science and science education programs you love and donate to them. The Planetary Science Institute's a 501c3, and we need to bring in at least $5 million at a minimum to keep things going with projected.
At the Planetary Science Institute?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully there will be sources of funding.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've reached the end of our hour. But I think we put it all on the field on this one. So now I'm going to be back tonight for the final episode of my live stream. What about you?
I am going to be back tomorrow, showing off our new citizen science projects and possibly putting them into public beta. They will definitely be going into public beta. Whether or not I have a tutorial for both of them, that is the bigger question.
Oh, fantastic. That's so exciting. And I am currently hacking my Sea-Star telescope, and hopefully we'll have some really cool experiments. Yeah. So hopefully we'll have a way that people can connect to these things remotely and control them. So stay tuned on that. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And we will see you all in 2 months.
Yep. Bye-bye.